You're listening to TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour with your host, the Director of Dixie Heritage, Dr. Ed DeVries.
This week on TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour is Russell Walker. Those of you who were listening a couple of weeks ago, I guess about a month ago now, it was a couple of weeks before the midterm election. We had an episode, and our guest was also Russell Walker. At that time, he was running for House Seat 48 in North Carolina. He since lost that election. And he had emailed, I had told him during the interview that I would call him after the election and that I would get his take on the election, kind of a post-election response discussion. And I did try to call him the day after the election, and I spoke to his wife, and he was incapacitated. He was incapable of talking to me at that particular time. And I just let it go. But he sent me a couple of emails since then saying, you know what, there are some things that I learned in the election. I'd really like to share them with your radio audience. And so I called Russell this week, and we talked on the phone. And pretty much what you're going to hear is really an uncut interview. I didn't really do a lot of editing to it. Because I just wanted to let Russell say what he wanted to say. I will say that a lot of things that Russell says I don't agree with, and a lot of things that Russell says I know that a lot of our listeners are not going to agree with. When we interviewed him the first time, he said a lot of things that people didn't agree with, but for whatever reason, they enjoyed hearing it. And I talked to Russell about this during the interview, and I think what it is I think it's just refreshing to hear somebody just speak their mind and not worry about political correctness, not worrying about offending somebody, not worrying about reading the script, which is what all of the politicians do. He doesn't have a script. He just speaks. And whether we agree with him or whether we disagree with him, I believe our listeners find that refreshing. And so I'm giving you the opportunity to hear him speak again. Let me warn you, if you thought that he was outspoken the first time when he was running for office, now that he's lost, he's even more outspoken. But again, I will let the candidate speak for himself. And that's another reason why we did not do a lot of editing to this, is because we want him to speak for himself. We don't want it to be said later that we edited him out of context, which is what the other media outlets do. But we're not the other media outlets. And so with that said, we'll go into our interview with Russell Walker. Let me say this before we go into it. Apple really screwed us when they updated the Macintosh operating system this last time around, because the software that we use to record telephone calls does not work with the new Mac OS. And so I'm having to use QuickTime to record a FaceTime call just to get a phone call recorded. The audio quality that we're receiving is horrendous. There's software that we could buy. It's a little pricey. I'll just put it out there. If you like listening to the Dixie Heritage Hour, and you need to take out advertising on this program, because that will pay for us to do the software upgrade that we need to do so that we can record these phone calls. Otherwise, we'll be limited to interviewing people who we can record Skype interviews with until such a time as we're able to acquire the software that we need. So again, if you really like the Dixie Heritage Hour, please consider taking out some advertising, or maybe just sending a small contribution so that we can acquire the software that we need, so that we can do a better job than we're doing today in recording telephone interviews. So I had to do a lot of boosting to the volume so that you'll be able to hear Russell, and sometimes that kind of makes the audio a little garbled. Again, just bear with it. The audio, you should be able to hear everything that he says, but if you're wondering why some of the audio is the way it is, now you'll understand why. Anyways, here's our interview with Russell.
I ran for the state of House of Representatives seat 48 in North Carolina. That comprises of two counties, Hoke County and Scotland County. These are two of the sorriest, poorest counties in the state. Hoke County is like about 10th in taxes of the 100 counties of North Carolina, and Scotland is number one. Hoke is about 84th from the top in per capita income. Scotland is 97th in per capita income. Counties are mostly, well, Hoke is more military, and Scotland's more agricultural, soybeans, corn, and that type of deal. Both counties are approximately 50% non-white, well, 40% colored, 10% Lumbee Indian, and 50% white, approximately. Both counties have never had a Republican. Since their founding, Hoke County in 1911 and Scotland County in 1899, they have never had a Republican county commissioner, nor have they ever voted for a Republican state representative. The amount of disease, morbidity, and mortality is above state average. I've got a website, walker4house48.com. I've got all these facts in there and details. I never expected to win, but when I lost, it still hurt. I don't know how else to put it to you. And what's really amazing, I ran on a platform that would normally be considered pro-black. I didn't advertise it as pro-black. It's the way I really feel, but just coincidentally happens to be pro-black. The entire tax system in this country is upside down. Only corporations and businesses should pay taxes. People on salary should not pay taxes. That gets into the 16th Amendment, a definition of income, but I'm sure a lot of your listeners understand. A tax on wages is nothing more than a form of slavery, whether it's 1%, 5%. That was the first thing I put. The second thing on my pro-black platform, I was very much against police murders. The fact of the matter is that cops shoot whoever the hell they feel like shooting and get away with it. It's been going on since I was a kid. And it was wrong then, it's wrong today. That's just the way I feel about it. Race aside, it's just simply wrong. It's outright murder. There's no judicial process. There's no evidence. There's no presumption of innocence. It's just bang bang. The story's over with. The reason the cops do it is because they know they can get away with it. They have what's called limited liability, and limited liability in reality becomes absolute liability because they can do whatever they feel like doing. And we all know that. The only thing that's stopped them in the last 10 years or so, these cameras, which make them think a little bit, and just general publicity. But that's one thing. The next thing I wanted to go for was homestead exemption. That when people lose their homes, that's outrageous. The government is supposed to tax property tax to support the people. But when they steal someone's home for property, to me that's absolutely outrageous. And most people in this state didn't even know that there was homestead exemption. Never even heard of it. Again, you don't have the smartest people in these two counties. That was the main essence of my platform. Again, people can go on the internet website and get a complete listing. And also, I thought the food tax, the 2% food tax in North Carolina, I think that's outrageous to tax food.
So is this food tax in addition to the sales tax that you would pay at the grocery store, or is it just the sales tax imparted on food?
No, it's the food tax is reduced. The food tax is 2%. The sales tax is in the area of 5.5%, somewhere in the ballpark. And I believe in criminal justice reform. I went to law school a long time. I've been to many criminal trials, and they're all corrupt. They're all rigged for conviction. Right now, in the federal trials, the U.S. government of cases that go to trial is winning about 99% of cases. Defendants aren't believed. We have an accusation as tantamount to conviction procedure in this society. We might as well get rid of jury trials because it's a waste of time. The juries don't believe defendants. The judges control the evidence that can be introduced. And the other thing is that in closing statement, the government gets two closing statements, and above all, they go last. They go last. In the second closing statement, they call you every name impossible. They throw evidence in the trash. And the defendant has no choice. Has no chance. You think if a person was in the state affairs, the individual on trial, he faces his life being destroyed, going to jail, all kinds of stuff. So you would think there'd be a presumption of No, the government gets 2 closing statements, and the defense gets 1. Horribly unfair, and no one wants to say anything about it. Well, these are the kinds of things which I'm in favor of. However, I learned the hard lesson that colored people, all the hell they care about is race. I just learned that the hard way. It doesn't matter what they couldn't focus on the fact about murder or target practice. They only could focus on the fact that we're nigger. It's crazy. It's crazy, but that's the way it is. The colored people, the diggers, to use the historic colored term, which we used when I was a kid, are simply stupid. I know no other way to describe it. They're in taxes. They're in counties with high taxes. Scotland County in particular has got the highest taxes in North Carolina, number 1. Everyone knows it. And they have utterly incompetent people. They're kickbacks and all kinds of stuff and graft and greed. You know how it works, preferred vendors. And they're paying for this. And they've lost jobs. No industry is going to come into a town where the taxes, or county where the taxes are the highest in the state. The schools are falling down. It's a long story. Everything is screwed up, but you still have these people who say, well, my daddy was a Democrat. Well, guess what, boys? My daddy was a Democrat also, so what? But you have this racial identity politics, and my daddy was a Democrat, and you're not going to beat it. Again, I spent about 5 months. I have these little business cards I handed out. I have this website. I talk to many people. I put these cards in mailboxes. I walk through parking lots and shopping centers. There's no other way to make your way known unless you have an awful lot of money. And one of the tragedies of a political campaign is it simply takes money. Unless you never do it, you can't do boo without money. You need to have literature. I had a sign made up, a picketing sign, which says "End the war on drugs." My opponent had been in office for 14 years. 14 years. Time for a change? Doesn't matter. He could be in there for 3 centuries. It would make a bit of difference. That is the harsh fact of life. And, like I tell people, and they'll keep a person in office who's utterly incompetent and does absolutely nothing. The guy in my case, my opponent, was Garland Davis. I didn't criticize him at all in the campaign. Not one negative word about him. It was an extremely clean campaign because he didn't have to say anything about me because he was going to win. And I couldn't attack him because if I attacked him per se, everything I would say would be racist, whether true or false. So I only attacked the Democratic Party. I attacked the system. I attacked his votes. He's anti-gun. He's anti-term limits. He's in the hip hop insurance companies. But it doesn't matter. The people are going to vote for him regardless. And another thing which is wrong, I feel, is compelled to auto insurance. If you don't pay auto insurance, you have no right to travel. That auto insurance, when the people realize it, is classic fashion, where the government gets involved with a corporation and they mandate that you buy auto insurance. The law of supply and demand. Well, when you increase the demand, you're going to increase the price. And the reason they have it is so the insurance companies can make more money. It's all kickbacks.
Will you do something for our audience, Russell? Will you do something for our audience here, Russell? Because fascism, as I understand it, is basically a government by a tyranny of corporations as opposed to, say, communism where, the government claims direct ownership of things. In the fascist system, they still basically own everything, but it appears to be privately owned because it's held by corporations, blah, blah, blah. But our listeners don't understand that. When they think of fascism, they just automatically associate it with, whatever the left wants to call fascist this week. And so would you give us a detailed explanation of fascism?
My understanding, it goes back to fasces. One of the things in that thing was the word power. And I would hope every one of your listeners would read that word power. Because no one will ever intimidate you again from being called racist or anything else. It has the answers. I've studied language for like 30 years, and I got sick and tired of people using the word racist. When someone calls you a racist, what they're really trying to do is to intimidate you. It's the same thing as calling someone big, tall, ugly, short, fat, etc. The function is to intimidate people. And once you have an answer, and there are many answers to being called racist. Yes, no, thank you, blah, blah, blah. The best answer is, what's wrong with being a racist? Isn't everyone? Or what's wrong with being a racist? God's a racist. There are a number of answers. I guarantee you with some of those answers, no one will screw with me. I had the opposite. I went to 4 debates, and my opponent didn't show up in one debate. Not one. Didn't need to. He was going to win anyway. I picketed in a newspaper. This campaign, if people look at Russell Walker, House 48 on the internet, they're going to see a lot of stuff. My campaign attracted nationwide attention. Even the local newspaper admitted that. The reason I believe it attracted nationwide attention is because I didn't back down. I was what my local newspaper calls an unapologetic, racist, white supremacist. And my answer is, well, why should I apologize? I said, God was a racist. I've used that God is a racist so many times, I've never had one person come back on me. I mean, hundreds of times. It's like running an experiment in a chem lab 100 times, you know the answer. Well, there ain't going to be any surprises. When you say God's a racist, well, they're either deny the God or whatever they have. I have yet to have a comeback on that one. Again, that website, the section on word power. But getting back to fascists, it's my understanding, fascists and fasces, which was a tree of some kind over in Italy, I don't know. The old Roosevelt dime used to have the fascist symbol, but it's where the government and private industry work together. Private industry now has the power that the government should have. It's kind of like the Federal Reserve and everything else. There are many examples of fascism in this country. Again, the best answer is auto insurance. And we know the Jews run the auto insurance companies. It's everything. Everything's a big gag in this country. Home insurance, same thing. You can't get a loan without home insurance. There are just a number of examples about fascism in this country. That's just one example. Okay, where was I before you so rudely interrupted me? What else could I say?
I'm sorry about that. You were actually talking about the fascists.
I'm joking with you. I hope you realize that. Pardon?
Yes, sir. I understand. You were actually talking about how mandatory compulsory auto insurance is kind of a fascist, scheme.
That was one of the examples. I mean, there are a lot of people who literally can't drive because they can't afford the auto insurance. Historically, you didn't have to have auto insurance. Getting on the highway was legally, they called it assumption of risk. If you get into an accident, okay, you're assuming the risk of driving a highway. But now the insurance companies get in there. They're going to make the whole world safe. Blah 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 blah. But the fact of the matter is, they drain off billions of dollars. The people in no state rose up and said, "We want compulsory auto insurance." No, it was the insurance companies through their lobbyists and through their contributions, blah 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 blah, who got those laws passed. The same thing with seatbelts. The average person has no idea what the real reason for seatbelts is. Oh yeah, they give us all a puke and they help in accidents and make you safe. That's a bunch of crap. I've been in 8 accidents, so I've never once had a seatbelt. I could tell us. Well, I'll tell you. We'll tell the story. About 7 years ago, my wife and I were in an accident. This colored boy ran right into us, head on, baby. It wasn't charming. Now we had an SUV. He had his car. My wife was wearing a seatbelt. She always wears a seatbelt. I never wear a seatbelt. Well, in the crash, she was kind of thrown to the side as the the way the seatbelt goes across your front. She was kind of thrown to the side and hit her head on the dashboard. I just hit my chest on the steering wheel, and she went into shock. Blah 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 blah. About 8 months later, she had a brain operation. Now I can't prove that accident caused a hemorrhage of her brain. I can't prove it. I suspected it, but the main reason for seatbelts, is so when there's an accident, if you're not wearing a seatbelt, the insurance company can try and deny liability. When you write a check to the insurance company, you don't have to be wearing a seatbelt. You sit at your desk, you write a check, no problem. But when there's an accident, they want to say, well, you weren't wearing a seatbelt, we don't have to pay the claim. That is corrupt. And that's the main reason all this other crap is being used as a way to justify the seatbelt law. It's all money. It's all sickening money, who rules the world type of stuff. Okay, that's my
If you love listening to the Dixie Heritage Hour, then I know that you'll love reading the Barnes Review. The Barnes Review is one of my favorite magazines. I began reading the Barnes Review long before they became a sponsor here on the program. In the Barnes Review, you will read vignettes of man, from the prehistoric to the very recent, from forgotten races and civilizations to first-person accounts of World War II and the late Cold War. There's just not a more interesting magazine published today, nor a more significant and important subject than real history. So if you'll visit www.barnesreview.org, that's www.barnesreview.org, you can find out how you too can become a subscriber to the Barnes Review. You can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review by mail, or you can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review electronically in PDF editions. Or you can subscribe to receive both. That's what I do. So visit www.barnesreview.org.
If I had won that election, by the way, the election came out, my opponent won 2-1. I got around 37% of the vote. If I had won that campaign, the publicity would have been unbelievably nationwide. White racist supremacist wins election in North Carolina.
Well, I can't believe that a guy running for a House seat in North Carolina got the national media attention that you got.
That was unbelievable. What had happened originally? Well, I won the primary. See, I won the primary, and look, I've never run for election before, but I won the primary. And after I won the primary, I went down one day for a meeting in Scotland County. The Laurinburg's around 20 miles from my house. I happen to live in Hope County. But at any rate, a long story. The chairman of the Scotland County Republican Party, I believe he was a quasi-socialist. I believe he was a Roman Catholic. He didn't like me because of my attitude, and he even went publicly out and said that he would vote for the Democrat. Now, talk about treason. Of course, in Scotland County, they've never elected a Republican in their entire history. But at any rate, at one of the meetings down there in Laurinburg, I got up in front of about 30, 40 people, and I cursed that guy out. I said he was a liar, he was a fraud, he was a tool of the NAACP and everything else. Baby, you talk about uproar. Well, the newspaper did an article on that, and that hit the AP, and that story hit around 170-something newspapers in the United States. My brother lives in Spain. He said they even reported on it over in Spain.
Wow.
If people go to Russell F. Walker House at 48 or something like that in North Carolina, you're going to see a lot of stuff about me on the internet. About 2 years ago in South Carolina, see, I went to law school. I know how to do all this kind of stuff. I don't mean as a bragging statement, but I have some idea how civil procedure works. There's in York County, what had happened, they did a renovation of the courthouse. And historically, there are all kinds of Confederate pictures and monuments and flags and all that kind of stuff in the courthouse. Well, when they got through with the renovation, they didn't put them back up. Now, in South Carolina, you have what's called a Heritage Act. Well, I sued for what was called an act of mandamus. Mandamus is a Latin word which means we command. It's one of what's called high prerogative writs. I sued the county and the sheriff in mandamus in the circuit court of York County. Well, I had no idea what was going to happen. That's like 2 years ago. Well, down there, the day of the hearing, they had hundreds of police down there. They thought another Charlottesville was coming down the road. You know, it's hard to believe, but true. And after the hearing, the judge denied the thing. He said that I wasn't a resident of North Carolina. I wasn't a resident of South Carolina, so I couldn't. I had no standing to sue. Blah 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 blah. Okay, I don't agree with it, but that was the ruling. And I could see a corrupt deal. That whole Confederate flag in South Carolina is such a volatile issue. The courts don't want to touch it. That's just the truth of the matter. I could discuss South Carolina sometime at length. And I've got a typical North Carolina attitude for South Carolina. We all look down on South Carolina. That's another story. So anyway, when they, someone kicked off the Southern Poverty Law Center, what do they call themselves? And they're not Southern, no poverty. They're worth like $19 million. And they got in contact with the North Carolina Republican Committee, and the North Carolina Republican Committee disavowed me. Oh, big deal. And this hit the news media in the United States, too. I was disavowed because of my racist attitudes and everything else. Hey, so much for freedom of speech and freedom of belief. That's okay. We live in a total hypocrisy. So anyway, when I had heard this when this whole thing blew up, my attitude was to fight back with Southern Poverty Law Center. And on my website, a big section, how they aren't Southern, they're a bunch of Jews. and how they had $19 million in their hip pocket. And that's not my idea of poverty. Well, I haven't heard boo out of those guys since that time. Like Daniel Webster said, nothing so powerful as the truth. So anyway, it was a campaign. It was a campaign that was volatile. Oh, one or two women called me racist. They say, goddamn straight up a racist. God was a racist. And they didn't say anything. They had no idea. They had no idea I was going to come on back and take them on like that. No one said life was fair. I think the people of Hoke and Scotland County were the losers because there would have been someone in the legislature who would have spoken up for them. This current guy, Garland Pierce, he's a colored boy. He's around, 58. He's on vacation. He's been on vacation for 14 years. He didn't have to do anything. He's going to get elected. It doesn't matter what. He'll be reelected. In fact, his only reelection campaign, only reelection effort was to put up a big bulletin board. And this is the first one he has ever put up as long as I've lived here. And it just showed a picture of Garland Pierce, and it said, "Reelect Garland Pierce, Democrat, House 48." Now, that election billboard of his was inherently racist. I'm not criticizing him for being racist, but let's just tell it like it was. It showed his picture. Everyone could tell his race. They didn't have to say it anymore. And again, I'm not criticizing him for being racist. I'd be a hypocrite otherwise. But he never did that before. He probably paid $6,000-7,000 for that billboard. I don't know. When he files the election reports due at the end of the year, I'll take a look at it and see how much that billboard cost. So at any rate, that was the election, and in Hope County, where I live, there were two people running for county commissioner and me running for the state house, and another individual running for the state senate. Of the four of us running in Hope County, I got the highest percentage of votes. The two commissioners got around 22%, and the state senator guy got around 17%. I got 37%. You still lose, but I met one white guy the other day, and he said, "Well, this county's so corrupt, I don't even vote." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, you don't vote in the future, I'm going to stay corrupt." I could go through, this county is poor, it's ignorant, and it's corrupt. And the choice we really have is to either live with it or move. And I've sued the county 3 times. I've sued the county twice in state court. Once over an ethanol plant, it was a $110 million fraud. That went to a published decision by the North Carolina Court of Appeals. The case is called Walker versus Hope County. There was another case where I sued the State Board of Elections and the Hope County Board of Elections in U.S. District Court. And I took that to the Supreme Court, and that was over the districting, internal districting in this county. We have 5 commissioners, and I said there should be 5 districts. No, everything's that large. And the net result is you have essentially all the county commissioners come from the heavily colored area of Rayford, which is a sorry place. But I live in a rural area about 10 miles away from Rayford, and I have effectively no representation. They do whatever they feel like doing. And now they're putting together a $15-20 million swimming pool athletic center. And you have the 5-member colored board saying, "Hey, baby, Whitey's going to pay for this." But you still have a county where the schools are falling down. It's just weird. We've had 2 hurricanes in the last year or so, and the water supply failed during these hurricanes for whatever reason. I don't know why, but the water supply failed. And these guys, instead of worrying about the water supply, they're going to build a swimming pool. This is the colored mentality.
You had said that, after you had lost the election, you didn't expect to win, but it still hurt.
Yes, I didn't expect to win, but it still hurt. Just to see the numbers come in, and I didn't run in this campaign. I'm 75 years old. I didn't run to make a law firm wealthy or to become. I used to joke I won't become a career politician. I really ran to do what I thought to be a good job, to have a voice in the legislature against vaccines. These vaccines are terrible. North Carolina is a pig state. They're the second largest producer of pigs in the state, and the pig story is another story. And I would have fought against the pig business, against the Republican Party in this case. It's long. The whole thing about pigs is a long story. Anyone who's ever been around pigs knows everything about them is filth and stench. This is a high tax state. It's not as bad as New York. We've got property tax. Car inspections are expensive. I mean, this is not a cheap state to live in. People don't realize that. And the gasoline is probably, I'm guessing 40, 45 cents a gallon more expensive than neighboring Tennessee, as an example. So, North Carolina's had 100 years of Democratic rule. The regulations are unbelievable. They have over 100 occupations which are licensed. My well driller is licensed. A woman can't open up a hair treating thing without an extensive cosmetology license. I don't know all the license requirements they have, but it's unbelievable. The bureaucracy is killing the state. This state, the big three were tobacco, textiles, and furniture. Big three, and all three of those are gone. And currently, they're trying to run this state on military and on pharmaceuticals, and people are retiring, and you can't do it. They don't create wealth.
Why would you want to retire? Don't get me wrong. There are some beautiful places in the state of North Carolina, especially, you get up in the mountains and so forth.
There are.
But why would you want to retire to a state like North Carolina that has a state income tax and no homestead exemption when you could retire to a place like Florida that doesn't have any of that, where there are no taxes, and where the weather's a lot better because it still snows in North Carolina. It doesn't snow down here.
Boy, do you live in Florida?
Yes, sir.
I went to law school at the University of Florida a long time ago, so I'm somebody of Florida. You're right. Florida has no state income tax. I don't know the other thing. I know they have high property taxes, but regardless, I like the weather here better than down there. But that's all personal preference. Different people think differently. In fact, my wife lived in Coral Gables for 40 years, so generally in January, her son lives down there. Generally in January, we go down there for a month or so. A week or so. In any event, North Carolina is not a cheap state. Don't anyone think otherwise. The inspection requirements, the air pollution nonsense for cars, it's the old story. You either move or you pay it, but that's just the way it is. At any rate, if I'd got in the legislature, I would do the best I can to reduce some of these taxes, especially homestead exemption. They have homestead exemption in Florida. I know that for sure.
Yes, sir, we do.
They do not have it. Pardon?
I said, yes, sir, we do have a homestead exemption.
And I think it's $50,000 or $75,000. But for a person to lose their home over property taxes is outrageous. We hear about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and all that business and waving the flags. At any rate, I lost. I don't expect to win again. The race cost me a couple $1,000, only to give people a choice. This guy, Garland Pierce, had not had an opponent in 10, 12 years. So I'm the first opponent he had. And if the people, you know where the revenge comes in? The people who voted, the niggers who voted for Garland Pierce, they're going to continue to pay the taxes. They're going to continue to have higher rates of morbidity and mortality, of sorrier food, some of the sorrier food they eat. They're going to suffer. They're going to reap the benefits of what they do. They want to play racial identity politics. Go ahead. You reap what you sow. What else can I say?
Can I throw an idea out there to you, and you're free to reject it or comment on it or whatever?
Sure.
In 2020, you really want to bring this to the forefront, run in the Democrat primary against him. So then he has to beat you just for the nomination.
Well, are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
He would win by a greater percentage. He's black. The Democrats in this county are like 3-1 or 4-1 outnumber the Republicans.
That's what I'm saying. If you ran as a Democrat, it would force him to have to debate you and actually campaign against you.
You don't have to debate anybody. You can't force him to debate. You can't force him to do anything. He ain't going to debate me. What, in front of a bunch of niggers? You're going to debate me? We'll have some real fun. And look, the people in this county know how I feel. I've never been reticent. When I picketed, the local newspaper and me don't see eye to eye. This wild liberal is the newspaper editor. Well, I made this sign up. I said, what's wrong with being a racist on one side, and the other side is God is a racist. People can go on the internet, look all this stuff up. It's all there. I'm not making these stories up. And people were stunned. The newspaper, well, the newspaper's not on the internet, but this is the first time in the 75-year history of the newspaper that ever been picketed. And they were stunned. They had no idea. They had no answers. That's why you always hear so-and-so's a racist. What's wrong with being a racist? You never hear that comeback. Oh, he's a racist. Well, okay, sure. And until people stand up, until the whites of this world, or at least the United States, stand up and fight back, they're going to be taxed to death. And if the colored man ever takes over this country, and it's headed that way, whether people realize it or not, Blackie ain't going to be kind. You just look what happened in Haiti in 1803. You watch what's going on in South Africa, what happened in Belgian Congo. You look what happened in Detroit. Our whole society is going to crumble. And I'm 75. I may not see it, but my children will see it. And they've got to wake up and realize that this is what's coming down the road. The annihilation of the white race is on the menu. One step at a time. Look at the Confederate flag. The reason the Confederate flag is so attacked is because it's Yahweh's symbol, not the cross. The cross is Roman Catholic crap of the 15th century. The cross is a symbol of hatred and shame and everything else. Why do you think that the Roman Catholics cross themselves all the time? And you ever go down to Mexico? And I've been down there many times. They have to have millions of crosses down there. I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. I've been in other Roman Catholic countries and nothing like Mexico. And I always said, if crosses would create wealth, Mexico would be the wealthiest country in the world. That is Satanism. To use the cross as a symbol of Christianity, and the Baptists and evangelicals who are ignorant whores, they hook, line, and sinker swallow that stuff. Hey, I ain't known for my charm and good looks. I hope you realize that. I hope that the people listening to this program realize that too. The Protestant churches are basically Roman Catholic churches in disguise, and they haven't figured it out. Look at the Apostles' Creed. It said, first of all, the Apostles' Creed is not in the Bible. This is manufactured by the Roman Catholic Church. It said Christ went down to hell. When I was 13 years old, I said, why the hell did Christ have to go to hell for? Never get an answer. But the Presbyterians, only the clowns, they swallow the Apostles' Creed. Pure nonsense. Any more questions?
You had said earlier that people in North Carolina look down on the people in South Carolina. Why is that?
Yes. When you cross the border from North Carolina to South Carolina, you almost feel it. South Carolina is like the sixth poorest state in the Union. I think North Carolina is somewhere in like 23rd. There's a big difference economically. In North Carolina is like 30% colored people, and I think North Carolina's like 16. The roads are poor, the homes are poor. There's just a lower standard of living. And to me, it's obvious. There's simply a lower standard of living. South Carolina is a much more southern state. I don't know how you define that, but it's a more southern state than North Carolina. And South Carolina is in the paw of the Southern Baptist Church. Southern Baptist Church is big on equality and all that puke. They've always been that way. In fact, I believe the reason the South lost the war between the states is because the Southern Baptist Church, and wherever you have a high incidence of Southern Baptists, you have a much lower standard of living. That's just hardcore fact. They took down the flag. They put that, and they had that. They voted this Indian Nikki Haley, who was a traitor, an evil mud, to make her the governor. While she was governing, they brought the flag down. She was behind that whole deal, and she put this guy Scott, who was a representative in the House, in the House of Representatives, made him a senator. And the Bible says in Deuteronomy 17:15, you're not supposed to appoint a stranger over you. South Carolina is in a sorry state of affairs, lower standard of living, and North Carolinians look down on them. Now, some of the South Carolinians, what they say is, well, y'all are a bunch of Yankees. That's kind of funny. I've heard that comeback. But the two states are significantly different in some ways. They both have property taxes down there. I know the auto insurance in South Carolina is much higher than North Carolina. They're sucking high and tit down in South Carolina.
So have you ever lived in South Carolina? I know that you filed some lawsuits down there, some heritage lawsuits. You have lived in South Carolina?
Yeah, I lived in KC, which is near West Charleston. I'm about 50 miles from the South Carolina border, so I don't get down there every day, but I've been down there many times. I lived near Charleston. When I mean live, I worked as a contractor. I was there 3 to 4 months, but I had an idea what things were like. Let me tell you something. South Carolina is cursed. Most of South Carolina is in a zone 3. I'm a registered professional engineer in South and North Carolina. Most of South Carolina is an earthquake zone 3. Down there in Charleston, you have the Cooper and the Ashley rivers come together. And the old joke is that the Cooper and Ashley came together and formed the Atlantic Ocean. But aside from that, you have this alluvial fill. Alluvial fill is the same kind of fill they have in most of Alaska. It's a fine silt. And in an earthquake, baby, you don't want to be around when there's an alluvial fill. They had an earthquake in 1877 in Charleston, about the damn place down. The state is cursed with all the high percentage of niggers down there and everything else. That's just the way it is. That's just my opinion of it. They've had a lot of competition. Now, about 2 years ago, on my website, so I got a big section in South Carolina. I go through a lot of this stuff. Well, since they've taken that flag down, they've had 2 or 3 bad hurricanes which flooded the place and caused literally billions of dollars of damages. Now, about a year or so ago, they were building this nuclear plant. Westinghouse was in charge of it, and it's a long story. It was being built around 10 or 15 miles north of Columbia. I'm somewhat off in these details, but that's the essence of it. And the cost got to be so high when it got to be like $13 billion, they canceled it. And now they want to make the people of the state pay the money. I don't know where that stands right now, but that's another screwing they got for taking that flag down, and they deserve it.
If you're like me, and I'll bet you are because you're listening to the Dixie Heritage Hour, you like to be on the cutting edge of honest news and accurate information. 26 times a year, the American Free Press newspaper can be delivered to your door, packed with the kind of uncensored news that I know you're going to appreciate. If you're ever dissatisfied with your subscription to the American Free Press, their guarantee is that you just drop them an email and they will gladly refund the unused portion of your subscription. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.americanfreepress.net. Once again, www.americanfreepress.net.
The Confederate flag comes from when Jacob crossed his arms on West Ephraim and Manasseh in Genesis 48. It is a true Christian symbol, red, white, and blue. It's symmetrical in both axes. The 13 stars represent the 13 tribes of the house of Israel, and that's why it's being attacked so much. I'm curious to hear what some of your listeners will say about this little interview, because I have not held back.
Well, actually, your first interview kind of garnered quite a bit of a response from people, and I'm sure this one will as well. I think even people who disagree with you will enjoy listening to it, just if for no other reason, because you're tired of politicians. And by the way, this is why I think Donald Trump is so popular, because you're tired of politicians speaking in platitudes or in political correct whatever. It's refreshing just to hear somebody just say what they believe and say what you're not supposed to say. Even if you don't agree with it, it's refreshing just to hear it.
Daniel Webster said there's nothing so powerful as the truth. When I started my campaign out, at the very beginning, I said, I am not going to sell my soul. Oh, another thing I forgot to tell you. Because my campaign attracted so much interest, there was a camera crew here for a couple of days. They're going to do a PBS special on me in the springtime. Of course, they're a bunch of Jews out of New York City. You know how I know. I don't know what they're going to say. They filmed everything. They filmed some people, some of my supporters. They filmed me campaigning. They had an extensive interview with me. They talked to some of my supporters. I don't know, people in the street. And, of course, these people in New York City were stunned. And one woman asked me a question. She said, Russ, you seem to be more interested in changing people's minds than winning an election. And I said, yes. An election is ephemeral. Changing people's minds is eternal. And I would rather tell the truth, how I really believe, and let it be known as an eternity of time than give a cock and bull story. And she was kind of taken back by that comment. Have you ever heard the story, there are only three people in life you got to fear? Your listeners will like that. There are only three people in life you got to fear. The king, the pope, and the guy with nothing to lose. The king's afraid of losing his kingdom. The pope's afraid of losing his church. The guy with nothing to lose, he is dangerous. These niggers get out of jail, they get a damn gun. And people want to screw with them? Not me, baby. They're not going to mess around. I mean, I'm being straight seriously now, right now. When you get someone like me who's running an election who really doesn't expect to win, he will say things that will stun other people, but they have no comebacks. When you get in an argument with someone, and this goes back to the nature of argumenting and debate, when the other person has no answers, they've lost. Basically, they've lost. Very simple. Again, I've seen that in court many times and arguing debates and all that kind of stuff. And the legal business is corrupt. When I was in law school, I thought that there was due process of law. I thought there were fair trials. I thought there was rules of evidence. It's all crap. It's all crap. It's all ruled by money, unfortunately. I've got an awfully cynical attitude. I know. I wasn't born this way, but life made me this way. But
Well, you said you're 76, so I'm going to guess you got out of law school 50 years ago.
That's okay. But
still, I'm going to guess you left law school 50 years ago.
Huh? I've been involved in many, many lawsuits, 30 or 40. I don't know. You can look them up on the internet. I've been beaten up in jail. I've been tortured by cops. I mean, I'm a charming guy. They don't like my answers. And the thing about a lawsuit, the pen is mightier than the sword. I deeply believe that. You can cause all kinds of problems with the right lawsuit, but that's another story. So at any rate, I made my share of enemies. One of my friends came up to me and said, Rush, you've made a lot of enemies in this county. I said, you're damn straight I have. No, I really don't care.
So,
in this county, that's an example. I've lived here 14 years. I probably only met 5 people in my life, but 5 people who went to college. Not that college is the end-all or be-all, and that college is a lot of crap. But this county is not filled, but substantially with these veterans. And a lot of these veterans have all kinds of disabilities. I've met about 50 veterans. Only one did not have a disability. These guys jump out of planes. I met one guy, 28 years old. He has a bad back right now. He made 20 jumps or something like that. These guys in the military are this is the old Southern nonsense. They want to fight for the same army that fought against Robert E. Lee. They're getting hit with Agent Orange, a toxic chemical. And the worst is depleted uranium. If people go to my website, I have extensive writing on depleted uranium and Agent Orange. Extensive, because people are dying from it. This is an area. These 2 counties have above average mortality and morbidity rates. I studied chemical engineering undergraduate. I'm strange, I know. Chemical, I've heard all my life, engineers are strange. Tell me about it, babe. I'm well aware of it. Your listeners can go to 2 websites. They can criticize them whenever they want to. They can take a look at it. It won't cost them a penny. But everything I know in life, I put out there.
So, Agent Orange, when you hear that, you associate that with Vietnam, but you're saying that that's still something that's actively in use today.
Yes. Agent Orange is a toxic chemical. You got 4 benzene rings, and the benzene ring, I don't know how much people know about this, is unknown in nature. The only way you can make benzene is through an industrial process. So when the plants or when the human body gets a benzene chemical, it can't handle it. When I was in engineering school back in the 60s, a long time ago, we used to wash our hands in benzene, all that kind of crap. No one knew. Of course, today that's verboten. That would never ever happen. But this Agent Orange was toxic. It took the leaves off the plants. That's one of the reasons they get heart attacks. Like oleomargarine. Colored people love oleomargarine. They're dying left and right. Margarine is made, we get what's called cis and trans fats. The average person has never heard of cis fat in their life. All of nature makes cis fats. I won't go into a long story. It's a CIS. So they go on the internet, look at CIS fats and trans fats. One's what's called an isomer of each other. I know chemical engineers are strange. Okay, we're strange. But that's the truth. I only eat butter. I keep the dietary laws. I believe in Christian identity. I keep the dietary laws in the Bible. And I see these people eating pork and shrimp and everything else. Hey, babe, you want to have health problems? Have health problems. I'm 75 65 years old. I don't have a doctor. I don't take any pills. I don't wear glasses. I don't have a hearing aid. I haven't been in the hospital in 50-something years. That's my idea of health care. Hey, I'm strange, I know. Ugly, nasty, hard to get along with. What else did I tell you?
Well, you know what they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And so, if you've kept the diet and you've maintained your health, there's something to be said for that.
It's like the League of the South. I was a member of the League of the South for 2 years. I've now quit. And it's really a tyrannical organization. There's a clique. And if you're not part of the clique, you're nothing. They should have me get up there and talk about the use of language, inclusion, color of skin, racism, prejudice, how people can defend themselves against all this crap. All this puke is designed to destroy the white race. It comes out of the pit of hell. And again, it's all on my website. People can go to Word Power and look it all up themselves. There are no secrets here. I'm not charging for books or anything else. But I've studied the use of language all my life. They wouldn't have me get up there because I'm too either irrational or doesn't matter. I can't think of it. But the fact of the matter is, these guys are going out in the streets to get their heads bashed in. The pen is mightier than the sword, and you have to. They don't have a proper offense. If people don't have an answer, you're a goddamn racist. What's your answer going to be? You're intimidated. You don't know what to say. As an example, black and white. Again, I have a scientific background. Black and white are absolute opposites. Called the Stephen Boltzmann law. Hardcore science. In fact, your listeners can go on the internet and look up not just Stephen Boltzmann law, look up what's called black body radiation. Don't anybody tell me the white and black are the same thing. All these lies can be attacked with truth. Like Daniel Webster said, there's nothing so powerful as the truth. Hill has a guy get up there, Tomey, whatever his name is. He's a hardcore Roman Catholic. He's ironically a civil engineer. He believes in Roman Catholicism. He believes that some same puke priest can turn wine into blood and flour into flesh. That's 15th century mysticism. The other thing, on my one website, my election website, I had to attack the Baptist Church because my opponent, Pierce, was a Baptist minister, and the head of the county commissioners in the whole county is also a Baptist minister. And I put some other things in that website to attack the Baptist, and again, they had got no answers. They've never been hit with some of this stuff before in their lives, but this is the way people learn things. I would hope that your listeners go to those websites and write all the kind of nasty letters about Russ Walker, what a sorry character he is. Wouldn't bother me, but that's where the League of the South is messing up. I've sent them all kinds of emails, a letter, and everything else, never got one response. And Hill wants to grow the organization. He can't take this antisocial, well, I'm too damn good to answer your emails or something else attitude, because it ain't going to work. That's my attitude. I've quit, and I agree with what they want to do, but their whole method is one of violence, which I don't think will ever work. It's like the U.S. military getting involved in a land war in Asia. I mean, what could be more insane? What do you got, 2 billion gooks over there, and then we'll take them on the United States military? I mean, even if you kill 50 to 1, you're going to lose. It's crazy. And these Antifa clowns, and I've analyzed Antifa, these people are crazy. They are literally insane. They're the people who have got nothing to lose. I think a lot of them are drug addicts. I think a lot of them have no skills. They're losers. And their attitude is that, well, when the whole society crumbles, they're going to come out on top. Well, they're living in a dream world, because if the whole society crumbles, baby, we're going to be living in a third world country. Again, I disagree with the method of Hill. You know, black is the color of evil. I know, not everyone likes that idea, but black is the color of evil. I don't care if it's a Jew rabbi black, or Roman Catholic priest black, or some Muslim clown over there black. Black is actually no color whatsoever, to be absolutely truthful. And white is all color, and black is no color. And the League of the South, they have the black cross as their symbol. Say black's the color of evil. You guys need to change your symbol. Well, you can see why I didn't go for that one. I mean, I'm not. My attitude is I put these ideas out there. People can either accept them or reject them. I got one life to lead, one life to tell the truth, or one life to try and make a better world.
Well, there's one thing we haven't talked about, and it could be the last thing we talk about, and that is election fraud. I know that there's evidence of it all over the country, but do you think that there was any there in Hoke and Scotland counties, or do you think that the results there were pretty dependable? Or
we have to define election fraud. What they do, these candidates hold big chicken and pig dinners, and they bring all the niggers in there, and they give a big old dinner, blah, 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 for free. Hell, that's election fraud in its own way. The fact that it's out in the open, and the fact that everyone knows about it, doesn't mean it's not fraudulent. They're buying votes. And I've seen the same technique done with this electric cooperative and stuff of that nature. This is one of the ways they buy votes, to be very blunt about it. To answer your question specifically, do I think there's any election fraud in the classical definition? I'm not aware of any, but I don't know of any. The colored people are incredibly well organized. They have this pre-voting and what do they call them? For 2 weeks, they're out at these election places with tents, and they have little barbecues, and they got supporters handing out literature and everything else. They are incredibly well organized. It used to be the churches after Sunday they'd all pile in their church buses and go down to vote or go down to register or something else. And the colored people are screwing themselves. They are stupid. They're living in poverty. They're going to stay in poverty and have no hope out. And they can blame Whitey all the hell they want to. My attitude, if they had voted for me, they would have done themselves a great favor, but that's not going to happen. It's just fact of the matter. It's just not going to happen. And hopefully I'm a realist above all things. I ran once in my life to see what it was like. And it was interesting. For all the cards I handed out probably 12,000 of those cards. They didn't make a bit of difference. It doesn't matter. That's one of the things I lessened. It doesn't matter what your program is, what you believe, what you say, or anything else. The colored people are not going to vote for Whitey. It comes down to power. It comes down to sense of control and everything else. Fine. Then they've got to live with the consequences. In Hope County, the people of Hope County have absolutely no representation in the legislature. I call it taxation without representation. When you talk about niggers, you need to go to 2 Peter 2, verse 12. Let your listeners read 2 Peter 2, verse 12. And it talks of wild animal beasts who don't know, who are waiting at their hour of destruction, don't know what they're talking about. Something like that. And baby, I've met a bunch of them. It's unbelievable. It's surreal. And if this country ever gets taken over by the colored man, it will collapse so fast it'll make your head spin. Just like Haiti and South Africa and the Belgian Congo and Zimbabwe and even Detroit, Whitey will be taxed to death. And it doesn't matter what the hell his Baptist church tells him, he'll be taxed to death and he won't be able to survive.
Well, you realize that the United Nations is just days away from voting on a referendum that would basically call for all of its member nations to open up their borders to unlimited migration.
Well, if that's the case, we need to get the U.S. out of the UN and the UN out of the U.S. You don't hear it anymore. Look, eventually we're going to get into World War III in Syria. And if you go on the website, I could explain this whole thing. Chuck Baldwin did an excellent presentation on that about a month or so ago. The similarities between Ahab and Trump. And we're headed into World War III in Syria, and it is not going to be fun. I was not aware of what you said about the UN, but the UN is evil. My attitude is absolutely evil. And we're a cursed nation. This country's going down. Don't give the crap, make America great again and everything else. We're a deindustrialized society. We have a phenomenal amount of debt. Even graduate engineers. It's amazing. Chemical engineers. It's amazing to me how little they know. I'm being straight with people. Even engineers cannot do 6th grade mathematics on a pencil and paper. And I'm being A+ serious.
Wow.
It's tragedy.
And we are literally out of time here on today's broadcast of TBR Radio presents the Dixie Heritage Hour. Check out Russell Walker's website. It's up there on the screen for those of you who are able to see this on the internet. For the rest of you, I believe it is walkerforhouse48.com. Also, go to our website, www.dixieheritage.net. Let us send you a free copy of our book, The Truth About the Confederate Battle Flag, and get you signed up there for our free weekly email newsletter, the Dixie Heritage Letter. And again, as we said at the beginning of the broadcast, we're having some difficulty recording telephone calls because the software that we were using to do so simply does not work with the updated Macintosh operating system. You know, we bought the lifetime subscription to the software, and now the company is just saying, you know what, we're not even going to try to develop our software to keep up with this current update. Really frustrating stuff. But anyways, there is some software that we could be using. Consider a one-time gift to Dixie Heritage, or just take out some advertising here on the radio show. And
if somebody buys a year's worth of advertising here on the radio show, it would pay for the software, and we'll be good to go. So from all of us here at TBR Radio presents the Dixie Heritage Hour, until next week, God bless.